Today, the left weaponizes yet another tragic shooting. Donald Trump's Twitter is reinstated by popular demand, and the Arizona Attorney General's office demands answers from Maricopa County. We've got all of that and more coming up, and it all starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sarah Gonzalez, and it is Thanksgiving week. We've got a few more shows in us before we leave for the holiday break, because as it turns out, sometimes TV hosts need time off too. I am joined today by Stu Burguiere, host of Stu Does America, and also today, host of the Glenn Beck program.
Yes, Pat and I doing radio this week, which is fun.
Yeah.
But I've been talking a lot today.
Yeah.
I'm sick of hearing my own voice.
Really excited to be here, I'm sure, for more talking. We are also joined by the one and only Alex Stein, BlazeTV host of Primetime with Alex Stein. Did I get that right?
You did get that right, so be on the lookout. Any minute now, any day now, any month now, it will be out.
Any year now.
Any year now.
We don't know. And if you think that Alex has any more information about it than I do, you're wrong. All right, so over the weekend, a lot has happened since we left you. Over the weekend, there was a shooting at Club Q, a gay nightclub in Colorado. There were 5 people that were killed, 18 were injured, and the suspect is a 22-year-old male who reportedly burst into this nightclub and just began shooting around midnight on Sunday. There were patrons who actually subdued the gunman before more people could be harmed, and the suspect, who I will not be naming, the suspect, I want to show President Biden's statement on this, and then I want to get to kind of the history of this shooter, of this alleged shooter, because it's very peculiar things going on that I think that we need answers to before we start talking about, an assault weapons ban. But the leader of the free world has already insisted that we use this to politicize the matter and push for an assault weapons ban. So Joe Biden tweeted out, "Jill and I are praying for the families of the 5 people killed in Colorado Springs and for those injured in this senseless attack. While no motive in this attack is yet clear, we know that gun violence has a particular impact on LGBTQI+ communities across our nation."
No A, no 2?
I think it's very bigoted
No
of him.
two-spirit?
Right. Yeah,
Very
no
bigoted of
no
him.
Asexual?
Yeah.
What's going on?
We need answers from Karine Jean-Pierre on that. He says, "We must address the public health epidemic of gun violence in all forms. I signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 3 decades, but we must do more, and we must drive out the inequities that contribute to violence against LGBTQI+ people. We cannot tolerate hate." And he is calling for, his official statement said, we need to enact an assault weapons ban to get weapons of war off of America's streets. This is something that really, really frustrates me, that I feel like the left is so good at and the right is so bad at, which immediately afterwards, we've learned nothing from the Pulse nightclub shooting back in, when was that, 2016 or whenever it was, where this happened, and it happened at a gay nightclub, and everyone started saying the same rhetoric. This is because of LGBTQ hate. There was no IA+ at that time. Okay, so
was there a 2?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think so. No 2. And and everyone came up forward with that rhetoric, and then it actually ended up being a gay man who did the shooting. So it's just really frustrating to see the left use this, immediately jump to, Joe Biden says, while we don't know any motives yet, I'm actually going to pretend like we do, and I'm going to talk about all of this hate towards LGBT people. And it's like, well, you sure are acting like you know the motive, even though you don't. They're using it to push for all of these things. They're using it to demonize people like Alex and I, who are actually exposing really horrible things that are going on within that community when it comes to children. But we don't actually have any motive yet. So for me, I don't really like being pushed up against the wall, and I don't like that conservatives are put on the defense and they feel like they have to issue a statement condemning hate against the LGBT community. I'm like, what? Can you wait? Can we wait? Can we wait and see what the motive is here? Because I want to get into this in a second, the shooter's history. oh, as it turns out, they all have a history, and we'll get into that. But it's just so frustrating to hear this, like the rhetoric being spewed on both sides, because the right is falling into that trap of having to defend why they aren't like the shooter who clearly targeted LGBT people.
Yeah, we don't even know if that's true.
Right.
Obviously, like the answer is always to wait for more information in a situation like this. There is nothing that is gained by your early tweet predicting what you think may have happened.
Right.
Even if you're right, like let's say it could be, this could easily be. Look, there are a lot of really terrible people out there, and terrible people do terrible things all the time in this country. That's what happens when you have 330 million people who are free, right? Some of them are going to use that freedom to do terrible things. So it's possible this might be what this comes out. It's not going to have any association with any of us. I'm certainly not going to be the one doing it. I know you guys aren't going to be the ones doing it.
Well, what about all of those people on the right who constantly call for LGBT people to be murdered?
They don't. That doesn't.
Right. Okay.
That is not a thing, and that's something that, of course, is quite clear to anyone who actually understands what's going on. And I think it's like a really. It's a despicable thing for Biden to do, to come out and in the middle of his statement say, look, and I passed this law, and it's very significant. And it's also a weird flex, right? Like you are the one who said, if we pass these laws, these types of things would stop happening. So you're bragging about passing the law right after one of these terrible things has happened. You're proving our point about these laws.
Right.
It does not. It's
Right.
not It's not going to solve these problems. Unfortunately, look, when you have a bunch of people who are able to go out and be free, even in a situation, I know we're going to get into this in a second, where guns may very well have been restricted from this person. We don't know that yet because we don't know the facts. But like when you have a situation like this, laws are not going to stop it. People are able to do terrible things to each other, unfortunately. But it's also a blessing in a way, of what our society is, right? We all trust each other at some level to not do these things. And over and over and over and over again, people don't do them. Yes, occasionally someone does do something terrible. We don't know the motivation of this thing. We just know that this person did it for some reason. Was it mental illness? Was it something else? We don't know yet. We will find that out in the future. But like we can't. Part of the price that we do pay for a very free society is unfortunately running a risk of terrible things happening. And it's people who are supposed to be the adults in the room, the politicians, the leaders, that shouldn't be taking these things and trying to take advantage of them. Instead, wait till we understand what's going on, and then maybe propose something that would actually help. Because almost all the time, you're just taking guns away from people like us that aren't going to go shoot anybody, and you're letting people who are criminals. They're the only ones that are going to have the guns. That doesn't help anything either. Yeah.
No, you nailed it. And it's Rahm Emanuel and Hillary Clinton are both on record stating that you should never let a good tragedy go to waste. And this is just a typical example where they use a shooting as some sort of political clout. But really and truly, this is a mental health crisis. This guy was on the FBI's radar. And once again, they couldn't stop a terrorist when they even had information about him. So for me, that's the most frustrating part, because this is the thing. They said this from Al-Qaeda from the beginning, that there is no defense to a suicide bomber. There's not very many defenses to a suicide shooter. So things like this are going to happen if you can circumvent it by maybe the FBI doing a proper investigation when he has a prior criminal history, or stopping the shooter before by maybe, instead of using all of the weaponization of our Department of Justice going after people that storm the Capitol, quote unquote. Why don't you actually focus on domestic terrorists or people that actually have a likelihood to shoot other people? But once again, it's our criminal justice system and our alphabet agencies, in my opinion, that failed us here.
Yeah, I think that you're onto something, because the list of tragedies that we've seen happen that have unraveled this year, is there one that you didn't go, well, wait a second,
Uvalde?
What is this? What is this part in the story where the FBI should have had red flags? What about Parkland, right? Like, that kid already had the red flags. They were already in the system. It was the bureaucracy and their ineptitude that actually, I would say, contributed more to these things happening, because they're the ones who are letting these things fall through the cracks, even with the laws already on the record. So it's really frustrating to see. So, for instance, you guys are alluding to it here. This particular case, the shooter just last year allegedly made a bomb threat to his own mother and was in possession of multiple weapons and ammunition. Now, in that specific instance, police did not find a homemade bomb on him, and he was taken into custody. He faced 2 counts of felony menacing and 3 counts of first-degree kidnapping, and his mother apparently didn't cooperate with the police. He was not prosecuted. The records were sealed, which would help him evade any sort of red flag laws and potential seizure of weapons, according to the AP. And the shooter himself said the case was dropped in a voicemail that he left at the paper asking for the story to be removed or updated. He said in the voicemail, there's absolutely nothing there. The case was dropped, and I'm asking you to either remove or update the story. The entire case was dismissed. Interesting things happening there that I feel like listen, felonies, if you're talking about felonies on record, you would not be legally allowed to have this gun. So I'm frustrated, though, because as I'm waiting for the facts to come out, I'm realizing who am I relying on to report those facts? We're relying on the alphabet agencies that Alex mentioned, whom I already don't trust. We're relying on the mainstream media outlets to take particular narratives and twist it. We saw what they did with, the El Paso shooter and others, where we finally get a hold of the manifesto. Not on purpose, because they try not to give it to us, right? But we get a hold of the manifesto and we read all of these things, and they portray this person as like this crazy right-wing nut job, and we're like, talking about climate change and environmental activism. Like, this is not who you're portraying this person to be. And so I'm like, I don't even know. I don't even know if we are going to get the full story. I don't even know if once we get the full story, I'm going to trust it. And it's just such a travesty to this country that we've fallen to that point where you don't even know, even if we're going to get the whole story, should we even believe it?
It's hard to know, right? And I think that's where we are, right? We really don't know the story yet. We don't know. I mean, some of his actions in his past would indicate that he would not be allowed to have this gun. I don't know how honestly important it is whether he was legally allowed to get it or not. I mean, obviously the left will try to use that as a talking point to pass new laws and everything. But the bottom line is everyone knows you can get, I'm sure you can get a gun if you really want to. Right. I don't know how to get one, but I mean, I know people, for example, use a lot of illegal drugs, and they're able to acquire these drugs, not at, Costco, but from somewhere, right? Even though they're illegal, people seem to be able to get a hold of them. It doesn't seem to be all that difficult. So of course someone can get a gun and they can do these things if they want to. One other thing I think we could step up when you're talking about these agencies and how we've been let down over and over again by in these particular instances. If you look at what actually we do know about this incident, we do know that at least two people were able to rush this guy as he was shooting and take one of his guns away and bash him in the face with it, knock him to the ground, hold him to the ground until police came. And what is really striking to me about that is it just shines a light on a situation like Uvalde, where we did have tons of trained people with weapons and shields, and they did nothing, standing in the hallway for God knows how long.
77 minutes, I believe.
Was it 77?
Yeah, over an hour.
God and Sarah knows exactly how long, apparently. A very long time, much too long. And where we had people in this situation that were able to take control of the situation, and as bad as it was, could have been much, much worse, if not for the bravery of the people inside of this club. So thank God they were there. Thank God they had the balls to go in there and take this guy down and, act in a totally the opposite way of many of these, law enforcement officials in Uvalde and a couple of, Parkland was a similar situation where we had people who had the capacity to stop this and didn't because of fear. At least we didn't have that situation here. We should be happy about that at least.
Yeah, big government is clearly not the answer because in many instances, big government does nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the case here. But, once he had the prior criminal history, you would think that would, somehow stop him from doing something like this in the future. But oftentimes when you get in the criminal justice system, it kind of radicalizes you more. It makes you feel like you don't have a chance of making it in life because you have a criminal history. So it might even, my point being is like in the war on drugs, we were very punitive. So drug users oftentimes get a criminal history, then they can't even get a job in the future. So it ruins their life. I guess with this, when it comes to a bomb, maybe we should ruin their lives for the future. Maybe when something serious like this, maybe we should be a little more punitive. If there are huge red flags like threatening to make a bomb, that's a little different than like smoking a joint or even doing cocaine, Hunter Biden.
Okay, so conspiracy theorists, you are
Tinfoil
the resident
hat,
conspiracy
proudly
theorist.
wearing.
Do you have a problem with, because Stu and I have talked about this before, I have a big problem with them removing, like if these people have social media, once they commit these acts, and then they just wipe their entire existence from the internet so that you can't go yourself and read what they've said previously, go view their LinkedIn or whatever it is, they just wipe them off of the face of the planet. Is that not weird?
Duh. I mean, that's the weirdest thing in the world. Now we don't really know their motivation. We don't know, because you can basically do a character assessment just by looking at somebody's history, their posts. You can tell usually their political ideology. So no, it is very important. And this is the digital, era that we live in, where it's the modern day book burning, where they just delete this person off the internet. Now we can't make
the narrative.
Yeah, we can't make the decision for ourselves.
Right. All right, we've got more to come. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Tommy John. So this Black Friday, just skip the crowds, stock up on comfort, cozy up with Tommy John's Black Friday sale right now. Tommy John is literally the most comfortable clothes you will ever put on your skin. Stu and I know this firsthand. They've got underwear, they've got loungewear, they've got pajamas, and you think that I'm being dramatic, right? When I say it is the most comfortable, softest thing you will ever put on your body.
You said it's actually the sale's happening now because it was TommyJohn.com.
TommyJohn.com/Y. Okay. See, Stu can't even wait until the end of the commercial. He's going there.
I don't want all these people to buy it.
I know, because it's amazing. They've got stuff for men, they've got stuff for women, and it is trust me when I tell you, it is the most comfortable, softest material. It is so, you don't realize. Alex is talking about becoming radicalized. I'm radicalized for Tommy John. Now that I've been wearing their stuff, you got to go there. Get 30% off site-wide at that Black Friday sale. TommyJohn.com/Y. That is 30% off of everything over at TommyJohn.com/Y. See site for details. I mentioned earlier that, something like this happens, the shooting over in Colorado Springs at this gay nightclub, and people want to point fingers at those of us who are doing the work exposing the sexualization of children. Alex and I, over the weekend, went to Patchouli Joe's. This is a bookstore in Denton, Texas. They were hosting a transgender story time, and the event was hosted by Amber Briggle, who claims, of course, to have a 14-year-old transgender child and is always very, very quick to lap up all of the attention that she receives from that. Well, I got inside and documented some of what was going on before they, of course, found me and kicked me out. Watch.
Excuse me, ma'am. You're with BlazeTV, is that right?
Okay.
And you're here for the event?
I'm here to check out the bookshop.
Okay. Well, I've called the police.
Okay.
So just when they get here, they may talk to you again.
Okay. Thank you.
And then
It's supposed to scare you.
Yeah, I'm like, she never asked me to leave. I was like, all right. Yeah. Said they requested that you head out.
Okay.
Complying,
This is child abuse.
but I will have my say
Child
as
abuse.
I comply.
This is child abuse. Child abuse going on in here. You all should have your kids taken. You should have your children taken from you. It's child abuse.
So well, first of all, I regret nothing, but I'm just, it's very frustrating because Alex and I are going to these things. We have a lot of people who are like, thank you so much for exposing all of this, but we can't do it on our own anymore. And we really need, I'm a 5'4", little petite woman going to these events, and I'm able to go in, civilly disrupt, say my piece, and leave. Why are you guys not doing this? I know you agree because you tell us you do, but we need you to get active in the community because, let me show you, here was the scene outside where I joined Alex, but here is Alex confronting the armed Antifa members outside of the bookstore. Watch.
See, this guy keeps on trying to bump me every time I walk by.
You right?
Dude, I'm walking down the street.
I'm standing here. I'm allowed.
Let him go sideways.
Get out of my...
Was he made of paper?
I'm not leaving, you guys. You guys
He wasn't
are trying to get
expecting
in my
that.
way. I'm here on a public street. Get out of my way.
Why did he fall down like that? It's like LeBron James.
I think he was trying to do a little bit of a pratfall, like he was falling, and then he wanted to make it seem more intense, so then maybe I'm in trouble. It's like, they do that, Stu, where you bump them and they fall down, so it looks like I'm the agitator or I'm the aggressor.
I'm so scared. He's got his gun, his big gun. He's a big bad guy.
I watched that fall like 100 times over the weekend, and I cried laughing
You
every
just slightly move your arm up, and you like, it's like
Just
as if you hit him with a
A Jedi mind. That's what everybody said, the Jedi mind trick. That's what it kind of looked like. It's like I would just wave my arm and then he just went flying.
That is a great fall.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is what they do. They bring armed Antifa out, who, by the way, was going in and out of the bookstore. That was
Yeah.
who recognized me, of course. And they want to intimidate you, and they hold up these flags so that you can't see what's going on inside. And they kick you out if you maybe want to video and record what's going on inside. If what you are doing is so innocent, why are you kicking people out for showing it? If this is so innocent, what is the problem with filming it?
You'd think you'd want publicity, right?
You would think.
Yeah, you'd want it shared.
Well, I just want to make this point too, because when you say that, when we did the original story, it was in June when it really busted out everywhere, the Drag Your Kids to Pride event where it said it's not going to lick itself. On that whole event, they were trying to say that it's all open and it had a clear glass door, and they went and put little pieces of paper, like 8 by 11 pieces of paper to block the clear glass door. It was just a small window. If it's so normal, everything's just so kosher inside, why can't we just see in through the little window? But no, they have to hide behind their flags and their little pieces of paper.
This is sort of their argument against the libs of TikTok, right? In a grand scale, where they say like, oh, I can't believe this person's targeting these transgender people. It's like, she's just posting their own posts.
She's just magnifying
Right.
their posts.
Yeah.
They owe her a thank you, I would say.
That's usually how they, but like there's this weird backwards logic that it's so normal and so common and so regular and not weird at all, yet if you show it, then everyone's going to freak out. Well, why are they going to freak out? Well, they're going to freak out because they don't think it's normal. They don't think it's is the same that you do. And look, again, we've covered this a million times, but like if this was adults, like whatever, do whatever they, you want to do some weird stuff, go ahead, do your thing. Everyone can have. We all have our weird stuff, I imagine. But it's like, these are kids. These are kids that should not be dealing with this and in the middle of this, and that's why people are upset about it.
Yeah.
And that's for me, it's like, listen, I'm not transphobic, I'm not homophobic, just like Stu said, if you're an adult, do whatever you want. But when you have a trans flag, you have a gay flag in elementary school, the only difference in a gay person and a straight person is who they have sex with. Really, we're all the same, but all of a sudden now you want to reward this, you want to put this in some sort of, higher category because you're gay, you might be more important. So it's just, let's take the sex out of anything to do with children, whether it's heterosexual sex, homosexual sex, any sort of sexuality. Let's just save that when they're going through, 17, 18, when they're doing, sexual education. But until then, we don't need pride flags, we don't need trans flags, we need American flags, Texas flags.
Yeah, I mean, we would all be really, I think, uncomfortable with a school putting a straight flag up, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that would be talking about the sexual, like that's not what we want.
Exactly.
You're right. That's a great way of putting it. It's the only difference, right? It's just who you have sex with. So like, let's not talk. They can learn that as they get older. They'll have plenty of decades to deal with this and with the positives and negatives of it. The bottom line is, like, when they're kids, they should be protected from this. And, I don't think it's too much to ask. It's certainly not crazy to sit there and say your piece, as you guys did. I mean, it's important. And they keep wanting to, they do everything they can to say it's absolutely normal, and then they do everything they can to put, not only hiding it with pieces of paper, but, I mean, I saw part of your video, Alex, where, I mean, you said they were fake guns. I don't know if they were.
No, they were real guns.
They looked like they were real guns.
I was joking that
Yeah.
saying squirt guns, they were 100% real.
They looked real.
They're
no,
always
were
real when they show up.
Which is like, I mean, that's if you show up to a voting booth with a gun like that and say, I'm protecting the sanctity of this voting booth, you'll get arrested. You'll have every liberal on earth. You'll be on MSNBC all night long. But Antifa does this every single time you guys are out there. I see these people with guns trying to quote unquote protect the LGBTQIA2+ community inside, and it's like no one ever says a thing about it.
Right. Yeah. It's just it's really frustrating because it's like, I'm fighting against the sexualization and the sexual indoctrination of children. If you guys are attributing that to exclusively the LGBT community, then that would be you saying that, not me.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's some sort of straight indoctrination, as you mentioned, Stu. Like, if there's some sort of indoctrination going on where they're teaching young girls how to have heterosexual sex, like, I'm on it. I'm not biased in that regard. I just think that it should stop.
I mean, if a Little League won the Little League championship and some dads thought it would be cool to bring him to a strip club where they hired a stripper to come out there, you'd protest it the same way. That would be nuts because kids shouldn't be sexualized. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and it's just so frustrating. You know, I wish we had this clip. I just thought of it, but just Taylor Hansen, who of course was documenting the whole thing, you should go and subscribe to his YouTube channel. I think it's Taylor USA.
Taylor USA. Yes.
So he was documenting this, and I had a conversation, an exchange with a woman who, all I can tell you is that she was chugging down the last of her beer that was being served in the bookshop as she was outside, and at one point she spilled the remnants on her. So I don't know if she was drunk, but they all have those weird crazy eyes with all the antidepressants that they're on. And I had a conversation with her, and it's like they just want to gaslight you. She's telling me, the mutilation of children is not happening. Those double mastectomies of children is not happening. The gender reassignment surgeries that we have seen are happening, that's not happening. And finally, I decided I wasn't going to get anywhere with her. And I said, okay, that's fine. Let's say that they were happening. Would you agree that would be wrong? She still can't answer the question. They won't answer the question. They cannot, because they know.
It is going on.
And she said, well, you're asking me a question that you know is a simple, definitive answer. And I said, correct. What is the answer? Because if you can't give it to me, if it's simple, answer the question. If you can't answer it, what does that say about what you're protecting? Who's in the right here? All I know is that I'm going to be on the right side of history. I would encourage everyone to join us. You can do that over at defendkidstx.com. I don't care what state you're in because we are expanding next year. So just make sure that we have your contact information, and we will let you know when things like this happen, and more of you can show up in the communities and push back on this disgusting place that the left has taken our culture. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk Trump's account being reinstated on Twitter.
I'm going to give Marjorie Taylor Greene her personal account back.
Was that? We're still laughing about the way that guy flew when Alex just barely touched him.
This is every LeBron James foul in his
exactly
entire career.
Yeah. It's definitely. I should have gotten called for whatever. What is it? Charging foul.
Yes.
Yeah. You there it is.
Look at the flop. It looks like one of those scenes from a Matrix movie where Keanu Reeves goes like this and the guy just flies all the way across the room.
That's what I'm talking about. Jedi. It's just I'm just wiping my hand and everybody's falling down. It's
so good. And then he gets back up and he considers.
See, he
considers. I'm gonna go.
Coming back.
Nope. That's not gonna do it.
That's the best part of the video, though, because then even the second time I showed it, I just kind of clipped out. But he debated. He's like, okay, should I go charge him? He's like, well, no, I just got my butt kicked
by an arm.
By this arm.
By a hand.
A wrist and a half.
He didn't want it. I mean, I could just see the quit. He wanted to come up, and then as soon as he kind of saw me, step towards him again. Now he's just like, all right, let me just reevaluate this.
He learned his lesson the first time. All right, over the weekend, Donald Trump was officially reinstated to Twitter after Elon Musk held a poll over the issue. And yes, I do mean just a simple Twitter poll. More than 15 million people voted, with 51.8% voting to reinstate Trump and 48.2% voting not to. And, while this poll was still going on, Donald Trump, I mean, who can blame the guy? He's got this Truth Social thing going on. He's supposed to be the greatest rival to Twitter of all time. He's like, I'm not going to be returning to Twitter. He said, vote now with positivity, but don't worry, we aren't going anywhere. Truth Social is special, with an exclamation point, sharing a screenshot of the Twitter poll. I did find it fascinating, though, and I think Elon Musk pointed this out. He said something like, the longer we leave this poll up, the better it gets for Democrats, and I just find that fascinating. And because it started out, the margins were much wider.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, for the yes position, but they finally won it out. And Elon's just like, yeah, I'm just going to govern this whole website based on popular poll, I guess.
I know, and it's like different than he said he was going to do it at the beginning.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
just like, I mean, this is a roller coaster, I will say. I don't know if this is what it was like at Tesla and we just weren't paying attention, but like this is kind of crazy, right?
It is really crazy.
He's changing features every day, and like I mean, it is a bizarre.
And he's like, by the way, you have to pay if you want to keep your blue check mark.
Yeah, which is like, all right, I don't really care about. I mean, it's just a very strange, and it doesn't seem like he's thought a lot of this stuff out. Like he really did come out and said he was going to come out with this big council to figure out. It was going to take weeks and weeks to figure out whether he was going to reinstate Donald Trump, and then he was like, oh yeah, Twitter poll. Like, all right, and then he deleted the council tweet. Like,
Did he really?
Yeah, he seems to be kind of just
is
making this up as he
weird.
goes. Which, look. We should all have this in perspective. This is a dumb website where people say dumb things dumbly all the time. And yes, that is a word, dumbly. I'm quoting it right now. It is really it's a ridiculous focus of our time, right?
Yeah.
Like, who cares who is on this dumb website?
I do. I want Trump back
I care
so bad.
too, yeah.
Well, he's not going to. He says he's not going to come back. He will though. I think if he needs the attention
Eventually.
later on during the campaign, he will. But like, look, who cares whether like. It's not a national incident whether he comes back or he doesn't. And I would say that there is a pretty bright line here that Elon Musk could have if he wanted to run this as anything other than just kind of a fun $44 billion whim, which would be like any federal office candidate should be up there no matter what. Like people are always saying, look, why don't you take the Ayatollah down? No, I want to know exactly what the Ayatollah is saying.
saying.
Keep him up there.
Yeah.
Like we should know what these guys are saying because it's really important. And we should also note that anytime Trump posts anything mildly interesting on Truth Social, every reporter comes over here and screenshots it and posts it anyway.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even make a difference. It's just it really is a ridiculous piece of nonsense. But he should be on it, obviously. He's running for president of the United States. He's a former president of the United States. He should not be blocked off a social media program.
Well, you're calling his reinstatement inconsequential, but reporter David Levitt would disagree with you.
Oh, yeah.
He wants to know how many Americans will die because Elon Musk brought Donald Trump back onto Twitter. Not quite sure.
11-teen, I believe it's 11-teen.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Specifically
Wow.
11-teen.
So you ran the poll on that?
I ran for Twitter poll.
Okay. Keith Olbermann said after this week, terrorist Trump's $8 would constitute half of Musk's income from Twitter. Robert Reich said, memo to Elon, freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom to incite an insurrection, which I find that one really interesting because I was actually very excited that the account got reinstated because then it was there, thank you. It was there, right there at the top of his page, a giant reminder that he asked for everyone to remain peaceful on January 6th. No violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. And that was not the only tweet that he tweeted that was asking people to go peacefully and make their voices heard. So just, it was very convenient for the left, who wants to constantly blame him for what happened on January 6th. And it was very convenient for them to, once his account was suspended, you couldn't go back and view any of his tweets.
Yeah, it's similar to what we talked about earlier when it comes to these shooters.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they delete their history, so then we don't even know what the actual person said. It's a revisionist history. But this is the thing. If you look at the tweets that the memes that Elon is sharing today about Donald Trump coming back, like one's a famous one where a guy's about to, sleep with another woman. One from Family Guy where she's like looking at pills. And basically it's just these hilarious memes. And Elon posted them. And then Donald Trump Jr. reshared them. Basically insinuating that his dad is dying to get back on Twitter. So it's only a matter of time till Trump does that Big Daddy Trump tweet that's just going to shock the world. But it's coming, and I hope sooner than later.
Yeah, I want to... So, Stu, you mentioned the way that Elon is handling this site is just kind of bonkers at this point. I want to go over, because I have been one who has said, guys, he's not red-pilled. He is not one of you. Proceed with caution, please, okay? And sure enough, he's facing backlash after his new policy on mean tweets. So he tweeted out, new Twitter policy is freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. Negative/hate tweets will be max deboosted and demonetized, so no ads or other revenue to Twitter. You won't find the tweet unless you specifically seek it out, which is no different from the rest of the internet, he said. It sounds a lot like shadow banning. And, again, this is not the savior you guys thought that you were going to get because he said that he liked freedom of speech. He was recently asked if Alex Jones would be returning. He said no.
Right. No Twitter poll on that one.
No Twitter poll on that
which
one.
was
Very
fascinating.
emphatic no.
Yeah, that was interesting because his like, if the people have spoken, it's like the word of God was his answer for Donald Trump. But then Alex Jones apparently doesn't get that same treatment.
Right.
You know? I mean, look, I do think that, you know, as much as I am very critical of a lot of these tech companies, it's their site. It's still their property. They ran it. They built it. And if they don't want to promote particular content, I believe that is something that is well within their power. Whether they should do that, I mean, whether they should like it be, I always like the free market. So it's like, I think that's the best way of doing it. But like, they don't have to like feature a tweet or whatever they don't have to put it to the top of the list.
Right.
I mean, put it in freaking order of response is fine with me. Again, I don't live and die with every little change they do in these algorithms, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask on this, but like, I do think that like they should have some control over their own company, right? Like, I mean, like, I always think of it this way, like if you started a faith-based social media company, you shouldn't be forced to put on all sorts of terrible content that criticizing God, right? You shouldn't be forced to do that. You should be able to have some control. The question really is more about how they're treating their customers, if they're treating them fairly, and whether like they're creating the best possible experience. Like these sites, I think for a lot of people have become useless. Like we talk about them a lot, but like it's harder and harder to get value out of them because you're just reading like, what Mark Zuckerberg wants you to read. And it's like, I don't find Mark Zuckerberg that interesting. So what he wants to read is not really what I want to read. And I think like what is interesting about those sites is when everyone kind of coalesces around one thing and it comes to your attention. Maybe you haven't thought about it before. Maybe it's some new perspective you haven't thought about. When you're trying to homogenize the entire internet, it becomes uninteresting. And I think these sites seem to be dying off slowly because of it.
I just want to know who gets to determine what is negative or hate.
We're never
right?
gonna
Like
it.
what is that? Is it negative or hate if I say transgenderism is a mental illness? Is it negative or hate if I say that we should stop radicalizing children and we should stop mutilating their bodies and chopping off little boys' penises and giving young girls double mastectomies?
That's too many characters, but yes, I know what you're saying.
Is that negative? Is that hate? Because that's what I'm concerned about.
It seems like it's just Elon, right? Like it's going to be Elon, and like Elon's personal opinion is going to be better than it was before for conservatives.
Sure.
But like you're right,
But
he's not the savior, and it's going to be all sorts of problems.
Seems like a big slippery slope.
Well, and I talked to somebody, I had a debate at DebateCon 2 this weekend, and they were talking about how they wanted censorship on Twitter, and that it's not Twitter's fault that they became the town hall, the town square, but sadly that is, and I don't want the government involved in any corporation, but I do think the government should protect freedom of speech on Twitter. I know that sounds insane, but because it has become so big, because it is the only place where you can organically go viral, it's the only place where you can communicate with politicians and celebrities, I think that, we should be able to say whatever we want, even though it is a private company, because it's different than like Christian Mingle or a Christian social media company. For me, because it's the biggest one, I think there should be more government regulated rules for free speech.
All right.
But that's not very conservative.
But it's very much a main strand of the movement right now. I mean, it's definitely an interesting conversation because I understand like there are a lot of negative consequences to both approaches to it. I think though, like I think the line that he's trying to draw there is somewhat sensible because you're right. Like I don't think they should be censoring, but like on the other hand, are they forced to promote stuff they don't want to promote? Like, are we going to say, because compelled speech has always been a problem with the in the Supreme Court. You can't do that. So to make them essentially feature a tweet that they deem hateful is, look, I don't think they have to do that. Whether they should or not, whether they should just go by the numbers purely is a whole other situation. But they don't have any reason to boost content. And if that's the line he's drawing, he's probably well within his legal bounds, right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, and this last thing,
really
I think you should be able to say something hateful, but you should not be able to incite any sort of violence.
Yeah,
because there's bad things that you can hate.
Well, certainly many people say a lot of hateful things to me, and I'm sure the other two people at this table all the time, every day on Twitter. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back.
I'm an Eagles fan. They always say hateful things to me.
Did the Eagles win yesterday? No, the Cowboys look good.
In a very ugly fashion.
Arizona's Attorney General's office ordered Maricopa County officials to submit a report on its botched handling of the November 8th election, saying that answers are needed before the election can be certified for Katie Hobbs. Assistant Attorney General Jennifer Wright requested a full report on how tabulator and printer malfunctions at some of the 60 Maricopa voting locations were addressed on Election Day, as well as a copy of each voting location's official ballot report, including any discrepancies and explanations. The letter did note also that the machines were tested the day before and no problems were detected. So it's just interesting because, part of the letter cites potential legal violations in the way that the poll workers handled the ballots. It says Maricopa County appears to have failed to adhere to the statutory guidelines in segregating, counting, tabulating, tallying, and transporting the door 3 ballots. In fact, Maricopa County has admitted that in some voting locations, door 3 non-tabulated ballots were commingled with tabulated ballots at the voting location. So we will see what happens. They are supposed to submit all of this by November 28th, 2022, which is just right after Thanksgiving here. I don't trust at all that we will be getting like the God's honest truth at all. But I guess at least the Attorney General's office is trying to verify, make sure that these elections are safe and secure. I don't know how much more safe and secure you could make it than this past election. The 2020 election was, as we know, the safest and most secure election.
Is this the second or is this the new
This is
first?
the new
Okay.
first.
Okay, good. That's good to hear.
Epic levels of safeness and secureness.
Look, Carrie Lake has every right as a candidate to be able to look at her options and see what she can find and try to uncover evidence if there was something that that was a real violation of these rules. I really want her to find it, and I want her to win really badly. I will say I don't think it's likely. There's was it 18,000 ballots, give or take? That lead is going to be really tough to overturn. Unfortunately, we are going to be living in a country with Katie Hobbs as the governor of Arizona. But what Carrie Lake I think can do is look, she's made a real impression I think on a lot of people, and she's going to have a lot of sway in the party if she handles herself well. Sky's the limit for her. I mean, she has an incredible amount of political talent, and there's no reason this has to end, even if she doesn't unfortunately win this particular race.
Yeah, Alex.
Is this CNN and is he talking about Beto O'Rourke? I'm just kidding. No, Carrie is. She's a fire rod. I think it's all of her years in broadcasting that makes her extra special and good at articulating her political points. So no, I do think she has a big career ahead, even though she lost. But listen, when everybody's voting that day and half the machines break, or a certain amount of percentage of the machines break,
48%.
48%, and the majority of those voters are probably conservative voters. I would be very frustrated if I was Carrie Lake.
100%.
But the sad thing is, you can't put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste tube. I think it's just another win for the Democratic Party.
Well, and of course, it's just like such a gaslighting thing to do to the lady that they're painting as the election denier. Of course. So that they can very easily go back in and say, look at her, all she does is deny elections, election denier 2.0, even though these are legitimate problems. These are legitimate reasons to be upset.
And my understanding of Carrie Lake's position here is not that these votes came in and they calculated them incorrectly and therefore I lost. She's saying that there were voters who were there and were disenfranchised, right? This is a very common Democrat complaint. They say this all the freaking time. And whenever there's a line that's too long, that's what they blame for their election loss. I mean, look, she has a right to be able to go through this, but she's not saying that they got all the ballots together and then they started switching names on it. As far as I understand, that's not even her case here. She's just saying that, look, people should be able to vote if they show up to vote. And I think we all agree with that.
I would call it mass Republican voter suppression. We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. They always use the cute little flowery language, right? The New York Times published an article titled, "Will COVID boosters prevent another wave? Scientists aren't so sure. The shots may help older, pregnant, and immunocompromised Americans dodge serious illness or death, but the doses are not likely to prevent infections in any group. Recent studies suggest," they said, healthy Americans who are middle-aged and younger, as it turns out, are rarely at risk of severe illness or death from COVID.
Wow. No.
And at this point, most have built immunity through multiple vaccine doses. Infections, or both.
Yeah, or both, right. I mean, that's amazing.
Please, this says the shots may help older, pregnant, and immunocompromised Americans. Do not get this shot if you are pregnant.
No, false.
Do
get
not
get it. Please get it. It's safe and effective. Dr. Fauci said it. I don't need
Your kid's going to turn out like Alex if you get this shot while you're pregnant. Listen, I'm telling you because they talked about, oh, that's a conspiracy theory that it screws with women's menstrual cycles. That's not true. Oh, what do you know? A year later, we were right.
True.
Then we were we've been talking about the miscarriages, which would make sense if it's screwing with women's menstrual cycles. So I'm just saying, we might find out a few years down the road that this was linked to a bunch of miscarriages, infertility, stuff like that. Please don't get it when you are pregnant. That is all. I'm not a doctor, but the scientists don't know. So.
Take
You
the
made it
swear
all
jar.
the way to the end of the show, and then you make the editors get in there, and I mean, jeez.
I'm sorry, but where's the lie?
You just said the S word, and that's a nasty word.
Dramatic
and now
effect.
my kids can't listen to this show.
Your kids weren't watching this
No,
show.
we're not. Are you kidding me?
Not with me on it.